Okay.
Hey, God bless everybody. Um, Thank you for joining us today. This is uh, the Wednesday session talking about the Word, and I'm always happy to do this with you guys. So um, I just want to start just to pray. I'm just gonna pray a little bit, and then we'll begin. Oh Lord, I come before you in Jesus' name, my God. Lord, I just thank you for this opportunity to talk about your word today with your people, Lord. And Lord, help us to learn, my God, from your word how to be of good courage and to act, my God. Um, because, Lord God, you want us to have confidence in you, Lord. And you've given us all reason to be confident in you, my God. And in the name of Jesus, just encourage us today, my God. May you speak, Lord, and not me. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. All right. So, today I'm going to try to do this a little differently. I typically just do the actual speaking, but I don't tend to uh, look at the actual live chat itself so that I could interact with anybody who might be there. Because I know that other people do that, like Amanda does that. So you know what? I'm gonna try that. So uh, me a moment. I'm just gonna find it on YouTube because that's what I have. I don't actually have Facebook. So if you're on Facebook and you're watching this, I I I don't see you. All right. Okay. Well, anyway, while I get that up, let me just talk. Um, this month we're gonna be focused on the the theme: be of good courage and act. And that's a very, like, if you just think about it, it's a very motivating theme, right? It's like, uh be of good courage, uh you know if you put it in other terms, like, uh buck up, like, uh hey, you got this, uh be of good courage and act. Like, sounds like I hear that and I think of, like, uh I honestly think of old movies. I think of, like, like a general telling somebody in some old war movie, that you have to be of good courage when you go out into the field and whatever else. And but there's something of that, right? I mean, you're not, in all likelihood, you're not going to ever be faced with war, God willing. But there are ways in which you have to act, and you have to have confidence, and you have to be of good courage. Um, Whereas I think of, like, if you say it in another way, you say it uh, like, hey, get out there, like, toughen up and get out there and break a leg. There, now I'm thinking about, something maybe I might be doing, like, uh, messing around in a play or something. That's like a term in the play, right? Go break a leg. Like, you're not going to be terrible. Have some confidence that you'll be okay. So that's just my thinking. Honestly, that's just me playing around. But um, sometimes there are impediments to acting, right? And you need the encouragement sometimes, because having to act is not always that easy. And one of the major impediments to acting is lack of confidence. Um, so let's say, just as an example, just to illustrate this, you encounter one of those bridges, like, kind of like makeshift bridge, a makeshift bridge that goes across a small lake. like a small expanse. You know, before you go on the thing, you don't just walk on those types of things generally, right? You you kind of it usually these things might have rope or something like that. You kind of grab onto the rope and you shake it a little bit and you say, okay, this is okay. And then these things might have slats of wood along the bottom to, create the path through which you walk through. So you step on it and you say, okay, this doesn't give too much. Okay. And then you're like, okay. Then you calculate that together with, oh, well, I weigh this much. And it's like, okay, no, maybe this is all right. So you take your first step, it's all right, and you start walking. I've walked across bridges like that, uh, where I've thought twice about doing it. Yet, for the most part, if you had to walk across the George Washington Bridge along the side part there, you think nothing of it. You just do it. Why? Because the George Washington Bridge is a sturdy thing. It has been up forever. It's made out of steel and steel girders and like it just looks solid. So since it looks solid, you don't worry about it. You just walk. You just go. Walking across the George Washington Bridge while it is, over a giant expanse of water that, like, if something did happen, and you fell in, like, in all likelihood, you're not gonna make it. Whereas over, uh, the little, a little lake thing, a little lake bridge in some Bear Mountain or something like that. If you did fall into a little creek or a little lake, probably you'd be fine. Maybe like sprain your ankle or something. But you know, you're more trepidatious about walking across something like that. Uh, Even if the worst thing happens, it's probably not that bad. Where you have total confidence going, across uh, a gigantic thing like the Hudson River, uh, because you don't even think of the worst thing happening because it's not going to happen. It's like, goodness, I'm walking across the George Washington Bridge. So, confidence and having confidence to act. Now, um, and this brings up just the general things of, like, what causes you to lack confidence. Sometimes what causes you to lack confidence is uh, when you think about yourself. You yourself don't have confidence about yourself. So it's like, I'm not going to be able to. Uh, I'm not going to be able to contend with whatever it is that I have to do. So that's, I have to act in this situation, but I'm not sure about how I would act. I'm not sure what the right thing would be. So as such, I don't have confidence, and that confidence is, like I say, like primarily centered in yourself. It's lack of self confidence. Uh, then, of course, there's lack of confidence in externalities, and that's like the bridge thing, right? Like, I know I could walk across a bridge, but this thing isn't gonna hold me, because it's not built well enough. So in the Bible, when we talk about people, there's lots of examples of people having to have courage and act in the Bible. People having to have face difficult circumstances, things that are not certain, and in fact things that seem that if you judged it properly, that if you judged it sort of, quote unquote, in the natural, that what's almost certainly the case is failure. Like, like this isn't going to work. Like, if you're totally honest. So people faced in the Bible situations like that, and yet they're called to act confidently by God to do a thing, right? Now, um, In certain cases, there's a lack of, actually, there's always a mix of the both types of lack of confidence. I think of a famous example of lack of self-confidence in the Bible is probably Moses. Uh, Moses, when he's finally called to 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 rescue um, the Israelites out of Egypt, when he's finally called, he he has a lot of objections to receiving the calling, and primarily those objections are based on the fact that he's going to have to speak, he's going to have to express himself, and he doesn't know how to do that. He doesn't feel confident about that. Like, I'm going to need to be able to speak well, to speak confidently, and I have like a stutter. I have an issue. Uh, so there's an example of lack of confidence there. And then I think there is and then there's like always in these situations, especially in the Bible, uh, God, when he calls, the people in the Bible to act, he's not necessarily placing his encouragement for them to act finally is not him encouraging them about themselves. It's not like, no, in the case of Moses, it's not, no, well, you've got, you actually are a good orator. You actually speak well, no, you're beating yourself up, like that's that kind of encouragement is sort of like the encouragement I might give somebody, that it's like, and to boost their self-confidence. But no, what God does in almost all these situations is he he puts the confidence, he asks them to put the confidence, have confidence in him, that yes, you are deficient in this, and I'll supplement in this way. Like, I'll provide, in Moses' case, I'll provide Aaron, and Aaron can do the speaking for you, you know and you know but in the end, it's like, it's not just that provision, it's, I'm going to be with you. So ultimately, here, the ultimate, um the kind of fulcrum, the sort of foundation of of facing these tremendous situations that the people in the Bible had to face and act in those situations, was to have confidence, not to find confidence in themselves, but to finally have confidence in God, who is kind of the biggest externality. Like, God is not you. uh you know God is God, and God is saying that you can trust him. But will you trust him? Like, what stops you from trusting God? Like, what's the difference between trusting in God and trusting in the George Washington Bridge? You know? And, you know, I'm sure in your life you've faced things like that, where it's like, I have odd confidence in just, like, regular things, and I don't think about it, and I just trust them. But sometimes I have trouble trusting God. And, the main thing is that God is unseen. And, where George Washington Bridge, I see it. I see it. It's there. It feels like it has stood forever. So you feel like you can trust it. Like, oh my goodness, like, what's gonna knock this down? But and then, if you think about it properly, George Washington Bridge hasn't been there forever. George Washington Bridge, I don't know when that thing was made. I'm gonna imagine. I could Google it, but I'm not going to. That's some kind of, probably, if anything, a 20th century bridge, maybe a late 19th century bridge. Like, this has been around probably at most 100, 100 years, 150 years, maybe. You know, God is eternal. And yet we put more confidence sometimes in things we can see, things that actually are passing away. Because, George Washington Bridge, like, with as much upkeep as you put on the George Washington Bridge, it probably will eventually, it'll need tons of maintenance and whatever. And guess what? It will pass away. It will pass away because the earth will pass away. But God is who is from all time. He is, he calls himself that. I am. So he's not going nowhere. So God's call to have good courage is always to put confidence in Him, and yet it's always hard to do. So I think an exemplary story to just to focus on is uh, is actually um, Gideon's story. Now, I think this is like a perfect story for talking about confidence in God. So, Gideon, and that's going to be the primary focus of what I talk about as far as illustrating it from the Bible. So, um, Gideon's story is found in the Judges, and Judges is a series of stories about um, these individual people that God raises up in the aftermath of kind of the settling of the of Canaan, after the Exodus and going into the the promised land, and settling it as well as they did. They didn't quite take everything they were supposed to. They were disobedient in different ways, but they were in the land, and they had to contend with living in there. They had to contend with keeping the land, and they had to serve God amongst all these, and be faithful to God amongst all these uh pagans, essentially, people who don't follow the same God, and whose gods serve as a temptation, uh and these other people's cultures and following their gods and their ways serve as a temptation to the Israelites. So these people are out there, and uh, they they don't have like a leader. They don't have like a that is a king. Unlike the other nations, they don't have a king, and they've got these guys and actually one girl that God raises up so that they can they can hold on to the land. And this judge always brings something of a revival of sorts, and always brings victory against enemies. And Gideon, he's one of these guys. And at the time of Gideon, the main bad guys, 'cause I don't want to think of it like a video game or something. The main bad guys of the Israelites at the time uh, were the Midianites, and they were causing a lot of trouble for them. And I love the way Gideon's story starts. It's talking about the oppressive Midianites, like say Judges 6, verse 2. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. So the Midianites were so oppressive that uh, these guys, the Israelites, actually had to hole up in it. Couldn't quite live out in the open. Couldn't they had their land, but they couldn't quite live in it in a comfortable way. You know, there's actually some parallels of that today, honestly, in the land of Israel now. So, these, you know, the Midianites are causing real problems for them. And it says that the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, and he heard them, and he sent them a prophet. And this is, you know, this is the reminder. This is the reminder of having confidence in God. He says, this is verse 7 and 8. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet. He said, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says: I brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of Egyptians. I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God, and do not worship the God of the Amorites in whose land you live. But you did not listen to me. So that's his response, to the prophet, and God through the prophet. The response to the people, they're crying out to God, because now they don't have confidence. They're under siege, and God is reminding them of all that He did, and that they're facing this situation now essentially because they don't have confidence in God. Because it's not just confidence in God to defeat enemies. It's like trust and confidence in God to actually trust in His ways, to trust in the goodness of His ways, to believe uh, that walking in His law, because that's what they had, is better than what's on offer. Uh, you know, Essentially, in their environment, what's on offer on the part of the Midianites or the Amorites or the different pagans. So, they don't have confidence in God. So this is a rebuke. Then an angel of the Lord comes and approaches this guy. He approaches this guy named Gideon. And the angel, when he finds him threshing wheat in this place, but he's doing it like everybody else. He's doing it holed up. He's in an area where he's able to do his wine pressing and all that, but out of sight. Hopefully, the Midianites don't see him and don't take all his stuff and whatever. So this isn't a guy who has super confidence either. He's worried about, he's worried about getting jacked. And the angel tells him, uh, where was the line here? Uh, he comes up to him and says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." And Gideon's reply I love in verse 13. Pardon me, my Lord. Um, the Lord is with you. So the first thing is like the Lord is with you. So there you go. It's like, you know, uh, God, he's still with Israel. The Lord is with you. But he's like, pardon me, my Lord. Gideon replied, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all the wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us to the hand of Midian. The Lord, this angel, turns to him and said, go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hands. Am I not sending you? The one thing I love here is, uh, you know, while this guy is holed up and worried about, uh, you know, some marauding Midianites or something, he this angel comes to him and calls him a mighty warrior. No, no, he's not a mighty warrior. This guy's not. He doesn't have the confidence of a mighty warrior. He's not out there like, oh, you know, if Midian comes over here, I'm going to show him. I'm going to, press my wine out in the open, and somebody's going to find out about me if they mess with me. No, he's actually scared. I'm sorry. So he has lack of confidence. But the angel speaks to him not out of where he is right now, but the angel speaks to him sort of out of his calling. He's called to be a mighty warrior. That's ultimately what's going to happen with him. And he's calling him that from now, while it's not the case. So, there's this thing in uh, in Hebrews 11, there's this thing where it's like, that you're the ancients were commended for having faith, uh, for having uh, confidence in God, and there's one point there where I think I'm paraphrasing it, but it says that I think it was Moses or was somebody is commended for being able to see the invisible, you know, and and that's it, you know. This angel, Gideon doesn't see it yet, but this angel sees the invisible. This angel is speaking, sort of encouraging this guy to have faith. It's like, and is telling him uh, something about himself that hasn't actually manifest. Mighty warrior, and for anybody uh, to act in faith, acting in faith is having confidence in things unseen. So, you know, if you can see it, if it's clear and present to you, then you don't need to quite have faith exactly. Then it's just evident, and you just do it. You know. But you know, the angel himself is like, even in this, is sort of, I think, encouraging faith. Calling him something he isn't, but something that he can be in faith. So, you know, uh, uh, Gideon is told, "Go out in your strength and save Israel." Now, I'm gonna, condense this next little bit. Um, he Gideon replies, and he does the thing about self-confidence, and he says, "How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh." So, it's in the book of Numbers, you get like the numbers of all these groups and how big they are and stuff like that. If I remember correctly, I think Judah was like always the biggest one. But he's like, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, so for however big my group, my clan is, and I'm the least in my own family. So he's like I come from a small people, and I myself am the smallest of the small. So he's like, it's like a nested lack of confidence. So it's like, forget it. Like, what are you talking about? Don't talk to me. And the Lord answers, I will be with you. I will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive. Um, and that's that's really something. Then the next thing he does is, he's encouraged to Gideon is encouraged to actually do a I'm going to skip a little bit. Um, Gideon, uh, the next thing he does is he actually does a sort of sacrifice to God by destroying an altar to Baal, you know, and even that. So to take that action, the 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 angel told him, go out in your strength and defeat the Midianites. Go out in the strength you have, like, you don't feel too confident, but in the strength you have, go out and defeat the Midianites. Am I not sending you? That am I not sending you is the key thing. 'Cause it's like because he realizes that this is a supernatural experience. He has a confirming experience by like doing a sort of creating something of a burnt offering, and then the burnt offering being consumed, and then he really realizes, okay, God's here. And that gives him what? A little confidence. A little confidence. He sees a little bit of the power of God, and he has a little confidence to do the next thing. And I think that happens to us sometimes. Like, some of us have not seen things like that. You haven't seen like a burnt offering, you know, explode right in front of you or anything like that. And maybe you haven't seen very much in terms of supernatural signs in your own life, that are like really big and significant. But I'm sure that there are things that you can point to. There are ways that you can say God has provided here, God has provided there. And in that little bit, that it's like that little bit that you get from God should act as a sort of fuel, and act as a as something to build your confidence so that you can keep going. So with that little bit of confidence, he does the next thing. He destroys this altar to Baal, and but he does it in the middle of the night, which is great, right? So it's like there's a little bit of confidence because he did the thing, but there's also a bit of lack of confidence because he did it in the middle of the night. So he did it in the middle of the night because um, this altar to Baal, this Asherah pole thing, um, was important to the Israelites uh, who were worshiping idols. And he wasn't interested in getting into a problem with them because he knew that they'd get upset. So it's like, if I do it at night, then at least nobody will know about it, and they'll just wake up to it. But he he does it, and he's confronted. Like, even though they didn't see him do it, they see the aftermath of it. They confront him on it, and he winds up. Here you go, a little bit of confidence. He actually he cops to it. He actually, like, says, Yes, I did it." And I love what he says. He's like, let me find that. Uh, they demand of him. They're like, "Bring out your son, Joash. Joash, bring out your son, Gideon. He must die because he's broken down Baal's altar and cut down the Asherah pole beside it." Um, now, um, and then Joash actually defends defends Gideon. You know, so there's like a little bit of confidence there. It's like, and that builds you up a little bit. It's like, okay, all right, so let's go on to the next thing. Uh, now, uh, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other people at this point are starting to join forces, and they're going to come in for a raid of Israel. And so now, what Gideon has actually been called to do, the hard thing that he's been called to have courage to do, is finally going to start coming up. And Gideon says to God, "If you will save Israel," this is verse 36 now, "if you will save Israel by my hand as you've promised, uh, you got to show me something. Like, I did this thing that you asked me to do to destroy you know, destroy the altar, and I've done this, but to help me do the big thing, I need something. I need to know that you're going to be with me." And he sets a promise. He sets a test for God, and this is the famous fleece, putting down the fleece. Now, you know, there's this thing, there's this thing of testing the Lord, and you know, one of the issues, I think I actually talked something about Jesus's um temptation in the desert, and talked about how Jesus says that you will not test the Lord your God, because the devil wants him to do something uh, foolish and presumptuous, uh, to actually show his confidence in God, which is perfectly demonic. You know, it's just like, do this evil thing because it'll show that you have confidence in God. Jump off a cliff because God isn't going to allow you to get killed. Just just diabolical. But his response is, do not test the Lord your God. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. And here, Gideon has a test for the Lord, right? Now, it's not quite the same thing. There's like, I kind of think of it. I kind of think of it this way. Um, I once encountered somebody when I was teaching Sunday school, and this was like a few years ago. I once encountered somebody who said that, and apparently this is actually something. Apparently, Oprah had this problem. Uh, that it'll relate. Trust me. Uh, that she didn't like the idea that God was a jealous God, because if God is jealous, like, then that's bad, because jealousy is bad, and that God would declare himself to be jealous, it just shows that God, like, wants to control you, and that God is, you know, and that essentially, like, we don't have a concept, you don't have a nuanced concept here, and this is why it relates, because that's not the jealousy that that um the the part of the Bible that says that God is a jealous God, the Exodus, and the Ten Commandments. What God is saying is that, um, that He actually burns with love for His people, you know, and He doesn't want His people to be destroyed and prostitute themselves to other gods. And frankly, they would be prostituting themselves to things that are not God. So this is a good thing to for God to be jealous for your flourishing, and be jealous for you to know Him. But people have in their minds, they hear the word jealous, and it's like, oh, it's a jealous boyfriend. It's like, I can't wear makeup, or he doesn't trust me or something. And it's not that idea. So you can mess up these words too. You can mess up this kind of test thing. There's a kind of presumption where you can test God, and then there's there's a sort of good testing. And I think that Gideon's testing was not it's not presumptuous. It's, Lord, I need insight. I need to know how to proceed. I need confidence. And I think I make this point. It's a bit protracted, but I make this point because I think if you need clarity from God, it's nothing bad. Ask God. You know, it's like, Lord, I have this important thing coming up. I've got this important decision. Can you show me, please? I need to know. Uh, I don't want to act presumptuously. I don't want to do something that's against you. Uh, uh, Please illuminate me. You know, and I think that is what he means here, and that's what this is. So, like, I wanted to, uh, you know, any confusion about, like, if you know about, like, the bad testing, then it's like, well, this is a good test, so don't worry about that. So he tests the Lord. He says, hey, I'm going to put out this fleece, and if it's I'm gonna put out this fleece in the middle of the night, and if it's I believe the first one was that if it was wet on the fleece but dry on the ground, vice versa, whatever. It's one of those. Then I'm gonna trust you. Okay, because and that's a great test if you think about it, right? It's kind of a crazy test, but, like, I don't think I'd ask God for that. That's pretty nuts. But it's a bold test because it's like, dew is dew. It just gets everywhere. It's just like it's water. But he has this very specific test, and God does it for him. That's amazing. But then he still doesn't have the confidence. And then he does the opposite one. Like, whatever was the first one, he's like, now just make the opposite happen, Lord. Like I still don't feel it, please. Uh, you know, uh put the dew. I'm gonna put the fleece out again, out in the grass, and make the dew be on the opposite side and then make the fleece dry. And it happens. My goodness. If God is not saying, listen, I'm with you, be confident, like most people don't get this level. So most people have to act with much less confirmation, you know, like, but this guy is getting a ton of confirmation. God is being very gracious with him. Um, and God knows what you need, and God equips. When God calls, God equips. And you can have confidence that if God has called you to do a thing, that He will equip you to do it. Um, but you do need to act. You do need to act because there's always, I never get the sense when I read the story of Gideon or practically anybody's story in the Bible who has to do something important. I never get the sense that like it's all kind of in the cards for them, that it's going to happen and that's it. It's like there's this thing of them needing to to follow through, them needing to do the thing they're called to do. Even to make that very clear, there's Esther. Esther, is told, what? You're being called, you're being called uh to do this hard thing, to to go to the king to 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 get protection for your people, to get protection for the people of Israel. And if you don't have the courage to do it, then you know what? The salvation of the Lord will come from somewhere else. So it's like, this isn't a guarantee. Sometimes when God calls you to do a thing, uh, it's you do have your part, you know? You do have your part, but God is there. And God is, by the stories in the Bible and by the things He's shown you in your life, the ultimate thing that He's telling you is that I'm with you. And here goes the last little thing. Uh, Finally, after this second test, uh, Gideon's chapter 7, uh, he does this thing where like to narrow down the number of men. That's a very interesting thing. But this is the one I want to talk about for Gideon and his particular confidence. Uh, Says now, this is in verse 9. Uh, Now during that night, that is the night that the Midians were encamping around uh, the area of Israel and were gonna invade. During that night, the Lord said to Gideon, "Get up, go down against the camp, because I'm going to give it into your hand." So he's just reiterating all the stuff he said. If and then like this is amazing. If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah and listen to what the people are saying in the camp. Afterward, you will be encouraged to attack the camp. So it's like, even after all that, God still has a provision. God still has a provision. And like the Lord is still trying to show you you can be confident. And it also shows me that Gideon is not quite confident yet, even after all that. So he goes, he hears the men talking, and he sees that they're like having a conversation about a guy had a dream in the camp, and the guy had a dream that like a piece of bread rolled into the camp and knocked down all the tents and kind of destroyed the whole camp. And then Gideon, with that, something finally snapped in him. That something finally like clicked into place, and it was like, the Lord, that piece of bread is me. That piece of bread is and that piece of bread is me. And God is even showing these people that they're going to be destroyed, and they're going to be destroyed by something very mundane, very small, a piece of bread. Not a sword, not a whatever, a piece of bread. A piece of bread's going to roll into the camp, and it's going to knock all you guys down. And then he has the confidence. Then he finally has the courage to act. And he does it. And he defeats these people. And God is glorified. So, that's an amazing thing. And what I love about this story is it 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 exemplifies God's faithfulness, how God can kind of faithfully work with somebody and 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 strive with you, you know, that especially, if you are called to do something. I don't know if you ever feel like the Lord has called you to do a particular thing and it was difficult for you to do because you had lack of self-confidence or whatever else. But you felt that calling keep creeping up and whatever, and that nagging thing to do what the Lord has asked you to do. And that's because God is striving with you. That's because the Gideon's God is actually your God, and he works in the same way. And and God wants to use his people. So, it shows that. It shows just how, like, when I look at Gideon, I think, like, I figured that if I'm in his situation, I'd be much better. Like, the fleece thing surely should give you the confidence. Like, like, you know. But what I like about that is, no, that's not true. You know what? You think that that would be true with you, but it's not. You know, you you doubt God. You doubt God. Sometimes you do trust George Washington Bridge more than you trust God. It's like, and that's just the case with you, and that's the case with me. And uh, it ought not to be this way. You know, and it's hard. It's hard to believe and trust in God because he's invisible. Because God is not seen. You know, and and then not even just that God isn't seen. God can be seen through. God can be seen. It can be seen through His creation. God can see all these things can point you to the reality of God. So you can even. It's not even the case that, like, you when you lack confidence in God, what you lack confidence is in His existence or something. Or what you lack confidence in His provision. You lack confidence in His care. You lack confidence in the fact that He, yeah, God is out there, and but does he care about this? Does he care about what I'm going through? You know, uh, you know, maybe not. You think, and I don't know that God's provision is going to come in the way you would like it to come, or that you know the calling is going to be, uh, or the calling is going to work itself out in the way you would like it to. But but I have confidence from the Word. I have confidence by things in my past, um, provisions that God has given, and I think if you do some of that kind of Gideon style testing, that God will show Himself. God will show up to give you that confidence, to give you the courage, because ultimately you need it to act, and He wants to give it to you. If He's called you to do a thing, it's because He wants you to do it. And if He's called you to do it, it's because He will equip you to do it. And if He's called you to do it, you will see it will serve the purpose that He has for it. And that's another thing that's kind of tough, because sometimes you're called to do things and you think that the fruit of it should be this and the fruit of it should be that. And maybe it won't be. Maybe it won't be quite what you think. But if you're doing what God has called you to do faithfully, then it is completing the purpose that He has. Like here, I'll think about is it Isaiah? He's called to call the people to repentance, but God tells him that God, is does him a favor from the beginning. Tells him you're not gonna people aren't gonna listen to you. They're not gonna listen to you. You know, you feel like I got to talk to my friend. You feel a burning desire to talk to your friend to preach the gospel to them, and then my goodness, it's like the guy or the gal just won't. This stuff isn't sinking in. They just like they won't accept their invitation to go to church. They don't look at the videos I send them. It's just nothing. It's like what the heck? And yet I feel like I should be doing this. You know, the things that God calls you to do are not futile. Um, though they don't bear the fruit that you would like. You'd like everybody to be saved. You'd like everything to go well. But, God works out his plans and his purposes, and he asks you to be faithful in what he's called you to do, and in spite of what it looks like. So anyway, this is just what I had for you, and I did bring up the chat, but I didn't see much of anything, so that's okay. That's fine. At least maybe my thing was messed up, but anyway, uh, God bless you guys, and have a good night.